emails about this every week. I know it changes from one option to the next option to another option, and then back to the first option. It's been a roller coaster. Basically, the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission was afraid they didn't have the funds available with the $3 million that the state had to use for the budget. And so they basically said, if somebody buys an aircraft and when people buy aircraft and the excise tax comes into the pot, we'll see if there's funds available, but they didn't think anything was gonna happen. Fortunately, somebody in Oklahoma bought a large business jet in the last month, and that excise tax is enough to cover our project. And so what we're gonna end up doing is able to fall right back on track to where we were. The projects were advertised yesterday, and they'll be open on March 5th. And from there, because the state's handling it, they're estimating it's gonna be about 30 days before a contractor is selected, possibly another 2 weeks for gearing up mobilization. Barring any weather, we'll go straight into a 30-day closure of the runway to get that finished as quick as possible. And then, once the runway's finished, then they will move all their resources over to Taxiway Alpha, which we can still operate on the runway when Alpha's closed. But that way they're gonna concentrate absolutely everything they have to hopefully reduce the time that the runway is actually gonna have to be closed. Some of that's due to concrete hardening times that we can't speed up, but their hope is that it'll be reduced a little bit. And we'll know more as we get closer and working with the contractor that's selected.
Okay. Number 7 is the airport survey by the transit pilots.
This is a program, our part-time employee, if you're not aware, is Lance Lampkin. Lance is a senior at the University of Oklahoma, and part of his studies, he's been able to do projects while he's working here part-time. And you see, working here to gain experience and is a huge asset to the airport because he's very knowledgeable and a hard worker. A project that he's working on for the University of Oklahoma is basically a survey of transient pilots, figuring out where they're coming from, businesses that are attracted to the airport, reasons for coming to the airport, types of aircraft that are coming to the airport, and going to be able to compile this into a report that we'll be able to use for whatever purposes it may be. And when we're doing speeches about the airport, we can say this is what our attractants are. These are people who use our airport to come into Edmond or come into Guthrie or Oklahoma City. And so once we get all that data compiled, and by the time he graduates, we should receive the report.
Is this a statewide airports, or is it?
No, this is just
this?
for this airport.
Oh,
Just
okay.
he's taking on the airport project, and he's working on a couple other projects, aviation related. This one happens to affect the
Okay.
airport, so hopefully in June I'll be able to share the results with you.
Good.
If not sooner.
It's for what period of time, please?
I basically starting middle of last month until end of May is basically the semester length, and I'm not sure if the data will stop second week before May, so he can put it into the report. But basically, just a 3-month snapshot of what we're doing. I guess 4 or 5 month snapshot of exactly what happened to come in at that time.
Yeah, the only bad part is gonna be when the airport.
That's true. That is very true. That is very true.
So is this a survey that you helped build, or is this?
I reviewed it. I reviewed it when he basically said, this is what I'd like to do, and we took it, looked over, reviewed it, and we may have made a few adjustments, but nothing that would take away from what he was trying to do in his project.
Okay. Good. Okay, we've got some action items here. Number 8 is discussion and consideration of security cameras and Wi-Fi hotspots at the airport.
Basically, we've had issues with security in the past where some of the newer board members, a truck was stolen out of one of the hangars probably about 4 years ago. And it was recovered, but it's one of those that it was recovered with the aid of the trolley. Actually, their camera was able to identify the vehicle that was involved in it. We've had some other tampering with hangars that we've had no way to find out who it was because we didn't have hangars in that area. And then most recently we had the people doing the burnouts on Taxiway Delta there. There was no way to figure out exactly who they were. So we're looking at the possibilities of security cameras, and we've been looking at it for a while, and it's one of those things where we could go just get a simple home security from Sam's Club or, some ordered offline. But we really think that it would be in the best interest if we're gonna do it, that we should do it right. And so we're looking at options and working with people who do this for a living to try and figure out what would we need and what would we benefit from. I've talked to the airport managers at Shawnee and at Norman, and they have some excellent security cameras, and so we've kind of taken some hints from them and piggybacking off on ideas that they've had, and to basically figure out where we need our cameras. And basically it's gonna cover our gates because those are gonna be the access points. We're not gonna catch anybody in the act with cameras, but it will be able to be used as one, a deterrent, and two, we'll be able to go back and review the tapes, and so we get the best pictures possible.
So it's gonna be aimed at the entrances to the buildings?
Entrances, we'll have some off the buildings, watching the ramp, on the gates are the ideas, down the road, and then a couple pointing up and down the taxiways. And we've talked with a couple hangar owners who've been willing to help us out with putting them on the hangars. Basically, we want them up high enough so that nobody messes with them, but they also need an electrical outlet to be able to connect to. And I know that Gail's mentioned that his hangar is available because it's right next to one of the gates. And then Dan Burdette has also mentioned it. His is at the end of Taxiway Delta there. The benefit of going with some of these security cameras and technology these days is that they run off of Wi-Fi. With that, we're at a couple $100 extra attached to the machine there. With the camera, we can transmit Wi-Fi, and so pilots would be able to have Wi-Fi in their hangar areas to be able to update their flight plans, close their flight plans, open their flight plans, or update their GPS for their aircraft without having to take it out and bring it up to the terminal here and do it. So we're looking at those options too. And basically, we're just waiting on receiving the first bid back and helping us build our specifications off of that, and then we need to get a couple other bids to do a full 3 bids, the wrong word, quote. We need 3 quotes for this type of project. But I think with the advantage to security and the advantage to Wi-Fi, which would be kind of on the front end of technology for airports, because there's not a lot of airports in Oklahoma that are offering Wi-Fi hotspots in the hangar areas. So it'd be a great service that we'd be able to offer with just adding a little bit of equipment to what we already have. So, like I said,
Is this the kind of thing that you cut into the pavement like the metal detector at a stoplight?
fortunately, go ahead.
Well, I mean, you don't want to have anybody to be too close to it, have it be in a building so that they'd be too close and get their wings tied up with the building.
Sure.
It seems like out in the open area, if it was transmitted from the pavement, might be, I don't know how these things are
Oh,
done.
for the Wi-Fi?
I'm just raising a question.
Basically, it'll be mounted on top of the hangar, and so it'll cover a large area. The problem with it, we have great Wi-Fi inside the building, but because it's a metal building, it won't transmit out of the building. And so we want to put the antennas on top of the buildings and kind of do a dome over certain areas, and we think we're going to be able to maximize the footprint of where we're hitting, and be able to get a lot of the hangar area for Wi-Fi.
I guess that falls under a new chapter in pilot instruction, Don't get too close to the building when you're upgrading your equipment. Remember how long your wings are.
So, basically, on that, we're just looking for a recommendation from the board that you guys think that's the direction we need to be going, and looking for security and Wi-Fi, and then we're gonna go out and,
Would you like a motion to give you the freedom to explore some options?
absolutely.
I would so move.
Okay.
Second. Okay, second. We have a motion.
Well, one last thing on that.
Yes, sir.
Is there, you said somebody else had done this already?
Security cameras, yes. They have those at basically Wiley Post, Norman, Shawnee. Shawnee actually they recently installed security cameras and are just loving them. And so they're kind of helping us with the procurement process that they've had to go through to look at what kind of details and specs they were able to get.
Just another question, so we would have the tapes, I don't know if it has tapes.
Record on a DVR, absolutely.
You'd have to change those out every so often?
Actually, with it recording on a DVR, it'd be like
okay.
a black box where it just kind of cuts off the back end, and so we'd have, depending on what it's set at, 30 days or 2 weeks of continuous recording
I
that
see.
we could look back through.
Okay,
And then if we needed to, we could cut it out and save it basically as a
right,
video clip.
okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Who made the motion, who seconded? I forgot to write it down.
I said,
Roger.
Carrie. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, our next item is discussion and consideration of building requirements in the corporate hangar area.
With this, we're trying to figure out a way that we can bring completed applications to you. I've had individuals request hangar sizes that do not meet the full width of the hangars. They're the full depth, so basically, instead of a 75 by 75 in the corporate hangar area, we've had people in the past request 50s or 60 by 60 hangars. What we'd like to do is be able to allow, if you guys let me know the direction you want to head with that area, it'll allow us to build the applications a little bit, it'll allow us to complete the applications with them and be able to bring them to you, rather than having to come up with the possibilities of saying, would you allow this size? If we could say that there is a size requirement of a 60 by 60 to a 75 by 75 in order to maintain that it's still a jet-capable hangar, but it fits within the bounds of that hangar lot, no matter what they build on that hangar or on that space, the city or the airport is gonna receive the same amount. And they're gonna be able to take that same amount and pay back the EDA loan. So our goal is to be able to get those leased out, because we do have a loan on that we need to get paid off. What we don't want to do is put a 40 by 40 out in this area and waste space that could be used for additional hangars.
I would think that probably a 60 by 60 would be about the minimum that we'd want to go on those spots that are for 75.
Absolutely.
That way, you're coming down some, how many people have you had that have come to you? Would they build a 60 by 60?
The initial one that we brought, that basically came to the board requesting, I believe he wanted to build a 50 by 50 at the time. And that was just, shouldn't have been done for the aircraft because they had a 47-foot wingspan. And
Yeah.
that's just a terrible idea. But this also, if somebody has a 59-foot wingspan and they want to put it in a 60 by 60 hangar, that's not a point where the board can really tell them they can or can't do that. But they, it's probably not advisable, but, it is they're basically leasing the property for what they want to do. But this sets the minimum on it.
To educate me,
Mm-hmm.
can we not put a minimum requirement for if they have wing size, then the minimum requirement for, or is that?
If they sold their airplane and bought a different one, I mean, it gets complicated then. And I think that puts us in a lot of places where we don't want to be making rules that we end up having to.
Just a
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think if you set the minimum requirements for the hangar to maximize the space, and I think 60 by 60 wouldn't be hurting it very much at all. Because now you're talking in between each hangar lot, you'd have, instead of your 15 foot in between each hangar, it would add an additional 10, or another 15, so you'd have 30. That's enough for cars to park, but not enough to, that you'd say, man, I wish I could put a hangar there.
Well, let's see, Dick, you were here whenever, I guess, the 75 foot was
Yeah.
set.
Mhm.
What's your feeling on it? The
I
thing is,
I think we've got our standards set. I mean, they are set.
You
And
want to stay with
I
75
think we ought to
or
stay with what we've got, and I'll tell you why. There's two reasons. Number one, when you started down through this thing, if